So we start with an arm wrestle. On the arm wrestle, Megan. Oh, smashed it. All that gym work's paid off.
Thanks,
Welcome
Ross.
to the podcast, Megan Marshall,
Thank
episode
you.
2.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So really excited to have Megan on board, episode number 2. Just smash me in an arm wrestle.
Yeah,
All that
starting strong.
training at the gym pays off.
Fit stop.
So where does your day start?
It starts at 4:33. My alarm goes off. And
4:33.
4:33. Yeah, don't ask why. I think I've worked out that maximizes my sleep.
No snooze?
No snooze. No. And then up, get ready, and at the gym by 4:58, so I can stretch for about 90 seconds before the class starts.
Class starts at 5?
Class starts at 5,
And
yep.
that's fit stop, is it? Mm-hmm. And that's like a all-rounded sort of full body workout.
Yeah, so there's 2 days a week where it's like lift sessions, and then there's one day where it's just full-blown cardio. That's probably the most popular session. And then the other 2 days are like all-body fitness, and then there's called a Saturday sweat session.
Crazy. And that's why when I asked Megan, would she like to be on the podcast, she said why. And I'm like, you're always at the gym. You're always looking after your kids, 3 kids, which Megan will talk about later. You're married,
Yep.
full-time teacher.
Yep.
Most people complain about having one of those in their life. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of, successful people comes down to their routines. So you train every day, and that obviously releases the endorphins and gives you energy throughout the day.
Yeah, I saw this Instagram reel, and I'm sure that they're probably 6 months after the fact that they've been cool on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok. So
Not on TikTok,
not
no.
on TikTok.
You're big on Instagram though.
People that get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym, they're not crazy. They're trying to find 1 hour of the day that's theirs, because for the other 16 hours, they're giving themselves to everybody else. And I ended up sending it to all the girls that I do the gym with at 5 a.m. And I was like, be proud of yourself for being committed and doing that one thing for the day that's for you, particularly for mums, especially. You give yourself all day, all night. I'm telling you that our 4-year-old did not sleep last night. So the day doesn't end when they go to bed, because sometimes you're on the clock all the time. So to sort of commit 1 hour or 45 minutes to yourself is a really good way to start the day.
Unbelievable. And do you have any caffeine or anything prior to training?
No.
No. Unbelievable. Well,
Yeah.
believe it or not, I used to be a personal trainer back in the day. And
Did you?
I did cancel more than most personal trainers. But,
I don't think you can cancel as the PT.
you can when you're 24 and a
Right.
bit loose. But yeah, from there you obviously train, and then you go home and
Yep. So then I get home at just after 6, about 6:05. My husband has a protein shake that's all ready to go. Usually one of the kids runs out of the driveway with it. And there's a competition each morning who sort of gets out there and hugs me first, because they're also up every morning around 4:30, 4:45. So
every morning, your kids
they
as well.
do not sleep.
Yeah, right.
Some people are blessed with really good sleepers, and we just didn't get that. So that's okay. You get a lot of time with the kids, which is a positive way to look at it. And then I've got about 20 minutes at home before I then leave and go to work. So I'm usually in the car.
20 minutes?
Yeah. I'm usually in the car by about 6:30, 6:35. And that gets me to work at my desk just before 7. And then I have an hour that's kind of uninterrupted, my time, that I can get all the jobs done that sort of need to get done before then the craziness of school starts from 8.
Right. And your husband, Carl, does the school run with the kids?
Yeah, so there's a bit of a sort of schedule that goes on. So I have never actually dropped my youngest to kindy once. I walked in once and picked him up actually 2 weeks ago, and the kindy teacher was like, "Oh, and who are you here to to get?" I was like, "Oh, I'm Rudy's mum." So the trade-off with working in a school is it's just not flexible. So you can't do school drop-off, you can't get to assembly. Like for the kids, you can't get to sports days unless you take a day off work. So it's, a lot of people in the past have sort of viewed teaching, especially for a female, as a really flexible career to have children with. And it is. You do get that time on the holidays where you can be sort of present with the kids, but during the 10 weeks of the term, it is so inflexible, and you do have to miss out on a lot with them.
There's a lot of work outside of those school hours, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, I think if any school teacher is somehow finishing their job at 3 p.m, I'd love to have a chat with them because I don't know how they're doing it. I usually, so I start work at 7, I'll finish around 4:30, I'll get home, I'll do the after school sports, sort of just entertain the kids, dinner, bed, bath, and then I'll work until probably 10:30 every night.
I was about to ask, what time do you go to bed if you're up at circa, 4:22? What time's the alarm again, sorry?
4:33.
4:33,
yeah,
sorry,
you should
22.
try it.
Yeah,
it's a good time.
I've tried many times, but it's easier in summer than winter.
That is true.
I work late as well, but not as late as 10 p.m.
Yeah, so I try and be in bed by 10:30.
You must sleep well.
Well, if the kids sleep, yeah.
And then going, yeah, so that's your routine. And what about it? How does a weekend look? I see you on Instagram having a good time and hanging out with friends and family.
Yes. I try and just say yes to a lot of things. And so sometimes that then comes at a trade-off that you're exhausted and we went away in the first week of holidays and I'd organised this dinner on a Friday night and we got home at 4:30 after being at the beach all week and all I wanted to do was just go to bed and just lay on the couch with the kids. But I'd organised this dinner and it took a lot of energy to like get yourself pumped up to go out. But I think I get a lot of energy from being around other people. Yeah. So whilst sometimes like it's the easier option is to hibernate and sort of be at home, I think saying yes sometimes and just going out and being around people, I think it fills my cup, I guess.
Sort of force sometimes, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. But very
lucky. You ever
lucky.
get a chance to relax at all? Or?
I think that's relaxing to me. Like I think being out with people is a form of relaxing. And having conversations with people and sort of catching up with them and finding out what's happening in their lives because I don't get to do much socially Monday to Friday. So I try and cram a lot of the sort of catch-ups with people that obviously kids, like the families that we've become really good friends with through the kids, we see them frequently during the week at sports training and everything. But then my friends and sort of that is nice to make time for them on the weekend.
And you went to school locally, or was it up at Redcliffe? You were saying?
No, so I was born and grew up in Redcliffe and lived there. My parents still live there, but I went to school at Clayfield. So it was annoying every weekend in high school having all your friends live 5 minutes down the road from school and you were 45 minutes away. And there were a lot of times, sorry, Dad, that I did tell my parents that I was just at a sleepover and we were not at a sleepover. But you had to sort of commit for the whole weekend because no one was driving you home to Redcliffe after a party.
Does that work ethic come from your parents, do you think, or...?
I think so. My dad is one of 8, good Catholic family, and his dad passed away when he was 10 years old. And the youngest, my uncle, was only 8-9 months old. So my nana had 8 kids under 13 that she became solely responsible for.
13, wow.
And, Dad had to grow up probably a lot quicker than what he would have had that not happened to his family. And he dropped out of high school in year 10 and he just didn't really do much with himself for a little bit until, like, he had good work ethic, but he just didn't know what he wanted to do. And I guess the times were different then. But school wasn't for him. He is a bad influence on my kids, telling them cheeky stories of what he would do as a student.
We're actually just talking about that prior to the podcast about school. And everyone's different. People finish school and excelled at school.
Yeah. Did you finish school?
I did finish school.
Yeah. How was your school experience?
I was a bit of a pest, to be honest. As I was saying to Megan, most real estate agents are. But
what did you do?
I wanted to make people laugh more than work.
Yeah.
So assignments were very late. I think I had nightmares about assignments until I was about 26 years of age.
Did you wake up in like sweats or something?
Sweats, because obviously they were never done, and I'd have to negotiate with the teacher about getting them done. But funny story with OPs, two of my best friends at the time opened up their OPs. We all lived in a close proximity. One got an OP1.
Yeah, fabulous.
The second one got an OP2. They said, Ross, how did you go?
Yeah.
I ran down the road, opened it, and I ran back and said, I haven't got the letter yet.
What do you mean?
Well, it was 24. So I told them.
Hey, it wasn't a 25 at least.
No, I told them that I didn't get the letter, but I lied
Did they
about
believe
it.
you?
I told everyone that I got, I did, but I told everyone eventually I got an 18 and I'm going to protest. It should be in a 12.
Yeah.
But, and
is it one of those stories that like the more drinks you have, the lower the number becomes?
No. It was always 18, and in my head I believed it as well. But but as we were sort of discussing, everyone has a different path. OPs and what is it called now? The ATAR, the scoring system. Whilst it's important, it's not the be all and end all. And
no, absolutely.
there is a lot of pressure on kids.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pressure then, but I think now's the same sort of thing. But there's so many different avenues for a child, whether it be a trade, sales, university, TAFE, college.
But also, just if you happen to choose one path doesn't mean that that's your path. Like the statistics now are almost that you'll have 13 to 15 different career or jobs within your life. Whereas, like when our parents would have finished school, it was, well, you get one job and then that's your job until you retire. And loyalty was sort of the quality that people looked for in employment. But now
13 to 15, is it?
Don't fact check me on that.
No. That does sound right. I was just trying to count how many jobs I had. And that's probably about right for me, because not everyone goes university, I want to be a teacher, goes to be a teacher, does 30 years, retires. I mean, even looking at like someone in the army, a lot of people in the army work in the army for 6 to 8 years and then they become a personal trainer or a tradesperson or motivational speaker. So it is very hard to have longevity in one career. So you're spot on. Yeah,
and some people do, and there's nothing, unusual about that. We've got a wall at school that honours people's employment for 20 plus years, and the board's full, like they are almost at their second board. So there are certain industries that still attract people and keep those people for a really long time. But I think if you have more of a focus on your skill set rather than what you know, I think this how you communicate with people, how like you spoke about at your school, like that you negotiated with teachers, and like that's a skill that now in sales, like that's the art of sales.
I do think there should be some sort of sales subject at school.
Oh, there should be more on people skills, like how you communicate. There's lines of sections at the bookshop on self-help, but there's actually nothing around how do we help other people, like how do we influence other people through our interactions. So maybe that's your next podcast conversation.
No, I really like that. So for yourself, you obviously went to school locally in Clayfield, then you went straight to university? Straight
to uni. So I graduated when I was 16 because I was born in December. So back then, God, that's... makes you feel old. Back then, when you started school, it was January to December, whereas now it's July to June based on your birthday.
Yeah.
So I was the youngest, and I just remember before going to schoolies, the police came to school and they basically were telling us all our rights as, underage when we're at schoolies. And they said if you're 17, you can get put in lockup, but if you're 16,
drinking
or just for if you did anything that was deemed irresponsible at schoolies. And they said, but if you're 16, your parents will just get called. And I was like, well, fabulous. I'm 16 and my parents are currently overseas. So it was my 18-year-old older brother that was my sort of guardian, and he ended up coming to schoolies as a toolie. So he was sort of a great role model. But
he's like, did you have those Red Frogs people there as well?
We did. Yeah, they were fabulous. Gave us pancakes one morning.
And they offered us frogs. We just took the bag and left. But,
they actually come into school. We've got a boarding house at school, and they're connected with the boys on a Wednesday afternoon. They come in and they just hang out with the kids, which is great to see that the organisation is sort of standing after so many years. But yeah, graduated at 16, survived schoolies, and went straight into uni.
Gold Coast?
I went to Gold Coast, and I think I don't have a lot of regrets in life, but I'd say that that's probably one of them. It just wasn't an enjoyable week. And now I working with teenagers, that's obviously comes up all the time, like how are they celebrating the end of their sort of school journey? And it's so great to see that now going to the Gold Coast is not the only option, and some are going overseas and some
I've
are...
noticed that, or even up the coast, or just doing a lot quieter activities. So.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's a milestone in your life that you should be celebrating, but do you really need to celebrate it just that one way at the Gold Coast? So, went to uni, went to UQ, started in a psychology degree, and then after a year was just kind of like, okay, well, if I stick with this, I'm going to be at uni for about 7 years, and I just didn't really see that as an enjoyable way to spend my 20s. So then my dad was like, well, what about teaching? Like, you'd be really good if you had kids. And
out of nowhere, or?
Yeah. Like, we'd never had a conversation about that before. And I was like, okay. So then that's my next 4 years. I did a teaching degree and then graduated at 22 and got a job straight out of school, out of uni. So...
You were supposed to go rural, was it?
Yeah. So in the education system, you do like a conversation with Education Queensland, and then they rank you based on that interview, and then high-performing sort of graduates get offered jobs the furthest away, because that just makes sense, doesn't it? Like the more...
Sort of like the police, I guess, as well.
So I got offered a job up in Townsville, and I'd been to Townsville once or twice on a basketball tournament. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. And I was young and probably naive. So I was planning the move to Townsville, and then got an email from a uni lecturer saying, hey, there's this job. I think that you should really consider applying. So I did. And I think I was just really casual about it. I think because I'd already secured employment, and at that point in education, it was actually really hard to get a job. There was more people graduating with degrees than there were jobs being offered. And so I interviewed on the Friday afternoon, and I just had my nose pierced. Yeah, right. And I don't know if you've ever had your nose pierced.
I haven't had my nose
pierced. But you have to keep the piercing in. You can't take it out. And I was like, well, I can't walk into this school with a nose piercing. Like, I'm not going to get the job. So I sat in my car and I took the nose piercing out, and I was just like, okay, well, fingers crossed that it goes back in after this interview. And sure enough, got the nose piercing back in and got offered the job on Monday. So the nose piercing had to permanently come out.
So that was the last time the nose was pierced?
That was, well, the first and only time.
The first and only last, sorry. Yeah. How good.
Yeah.
And then from there you were teaching in a local school?
Yeah, so I've been at that school, at an all-boys school, since I was 22.
Same school?
Same school.
Wow.
Yeah. I was just saying before that there's a board there that honours teachers that, or actually all staff, any staff that's been employed at the school for 20 years gets their name on,
You'll be there
on
next
this board.
Year.
I'm going to be there for
maybe on the 20-year board, yeah.
I know, sadly. Well, I've got my oldest starting there next year, so I'll be there for at least another 9 years until they graduate.
Never been an intention to leave Brisbane, or...?
I think at some point we will live somewhere else. Yeah, my husband's a bit older. He's 10 years older than me, so he has lived overseas several times. And I think that's something that I've always seen in our sort of future. I just don't know when. Yeah. But I love Brisbane. Like, Brisbane will always be home.
Yeah, Brisbane's pumping, obviously, at the moment. But,
yes.
One of my regrets when I was younger, I don't know, you probably had the same thing. A lot of friends went over and did the UK and Europe thing. And, and I was doing personal training at the time, could hardly even survive week to week.
It sounds like you weren't showing up.
No, I was showing up, but not on Mondays, that's all. Mondays are sort of a recovery from the Sunday.
Like, who really wants to do PT on a Monday?
Yeah, well, I eventually learnt that don't book anyone before 3 o'clock. But when you're young...
3 p.m.
3 p.m, yeah. Not 3 in the morning. But, you know, a Monday morning at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock's a bit early. But a lot of my friends went over there and they experienced that.
Yeah.
UK and, you know, they're taking photos in Belgium and running with the bulls and all that sort of stuff. And probably one thing I do regret, but... it's
almost like a rite of passage for young people in Australia.
Yeah. But... probably the only people that didn't seem to go were, you know, people that couldn't afford it, or people like you that were career ambitious at the time. But never say never, I guess.
No. Well, there's still a lot of life to be lived, I guess.
100%, yeah. Both you and myself are young enough as well.
Absolutely. very youthful.
Yeah. And then so you've obviously you've started off at your career at your school where you're at now, and then you met your now husband soon after.
Yeah, I don't remember meeting him. So
did you know where you met him, or?
He has a story of how we met, but I just go along with it, really.
Fair enough, yeah.
Because it was they do an orientation day for new staff. And so I ended up meeting like close to 200 people that day.
So he was working at the school as well?
He was there at the school, yeah. Which was funny because when he left a couple of years ago, there were some students that had gone through sort of 7 years at that school and had been taught by both of us and only just realised that we were actually married, and they just thought we had the same last name. And
I was about to say, did you share the same surname at school still?
Yeah, I changed my name. So actually some of the boys came to the church for the wedding. So some of my year 12s back in 2013 came to the church. So it was really special. Yeah. And they didn't come to the after party.
They didn't come to the after party.
No.
And then, you had your first child soon after.
Yeah, so we met, but then he just kind of courted me for about 6 months. I didn't really pay him much attention. And then we went on our first date. We played a game of basketball against one another. And
invited you out for a game of basketball?
Yeah, I know. So special.
Oh, no, it's nothing wrong with that. I'm listening for tips on how to meet a younger woman.
Well, it worked. Yeah. And then he said the loser has to buy dinner. And then I was like, well, I've got this in the bag. But then he beat me, which was kind of embarrassing. So then I had to buy our first dinner. So I took him to Grilled. So really spoiled him.
Actually, when you're talking about basketball before, it sounds like, did you play a little bit of basketball when you were younger?
Yeah. All through primary school and high school. Yeah.
There's a lot of the guests. We're going to have some guests down the track who are basketballers, and we love going to we love going to the Brisbane Bullets.
Yeah,
who are going back to Boondall now.
I know, because we
exciting.
Took the kids at the beginning of the year to a Bullets game, and I am just so impressed by how far basketball's come. Because when I was playing, there certainly wasn't a big sort of focus on women in sport at that time. So it's so awesome now to see how celebrated women playing professional sport is, and the funding that they're getting, which still has a long way to go. But yeah, I was so impressed by the Bullets at Nissan.
Now though, even there's the NBL, the WNBL, the women's, and then they've got one under that Lauren Jackson is still playing.
Yeah.
I think
she's
she's
a weapon.
43.
It's incredible.
She's having 39-point games, 20 rebounds, and I think, don't quote me, she may even be going to the Olympics potentially.
That's incredible.
Yeah, hopefully they had that golden era, the Opals years ago.
Yes.
I think they might have got a silver or bronze medal.
Yeah.
But never quite got the gold medal. So
well, this is the year.
Yeah, this is the year, hopefully.
Yeah.
But so you lost the game of basketball.
I did.
Carl.
So then
you took him to Grilled.
Yep, paid. Got him chips and a dip sauce as well. Just really blew the bank that night. And then we were engaged about 5 months later. So
there's a tip for anyone.
Yeah. Play a game of basketball. And then I think his smartest move was just locking it down early. He was like, okay,
before
well.
anyone else could get in there.
But my dad had just had a pacemaker put in, and we had this trip booked overseas, and he wanted to go and ask my dad for his blessing. And so we've gone to the hospital, and I didn't know that Carl was going to propose, but I just was watching him. I was like, why are you being so awkward? My dad's just had heart surgery. Could you just be a bit more normal? And then he didn't end up asking him that day. And then about 2 days later, he's like, can we go have dinner at your parents' house? And I was like, oh, okay. So we went there, and then I went upstairs for a minute with Mum, and then apparently he asked Dad, and Dad just said, look, can't promise she'll say yes, but have a crack.
You got my blessing to have a go, yeah. And she said
then,
yes.
Carl was travelling with a friend for 2 weeks over in the States, and then I flew over and met him and some friends in New York, and then got engaged about 3 days before Christmas. So
good. And then your first son, Finlay, is it?
Finlay, yep. He was born on the 1st of the 1st in 2015. So he was supposed to come in December, and then he just didn't want to be born. And then Carl, I was about 41 weeks pregnant, and Carl's like, look, if you could hold out to January, that would be beneficial, because he read this book that's the statistics show that the best sports players end up being born in January because they've got that age advantage over their competition. So they end up like winning everything. And I was like, I don't think I responded very politely at that point. But sure enough, I gave him a January baby.
What I've seen, Brisbane's obviously a small place, and so-and-so, you know Megan.
Yeah.
And have you seen her son Finlay? He's an absolute weapon. He's a runner.
Yeah.
He's a rugby player. And so that January timeline might have just
worked
been
out.
Correct. Yeah.
I know. But then I had a daughter in February, and she has zero interest in sports. So
musical or?
No, nothing. No, she's really good at drawing.
Yeah,
she's
like
more,
artist,
yeah.
It's funny how kids are so different. I got two nephews, and one's a athlete, and the other one's into dancing and ballet and drawing and singing, and
You
what about your third one?
Oh, the third is just a psycho. So we were so happy with two kids. Like, we had a boy, we had a girl. And we were out of the hard phase of parenting. Like, there's no easy phase of parenting, but there's moments where you start to feel like you're becoming your own person again, and the kids are becoming a little bit more independent. So we reached that point, and then the plan was always to have 3. But then when you have kids, you realize like how hard raising kids actually is. And so we actually, the kids were in daycare, and we went up to Montville for the day, and we sat at this restaurant, and we wrote this like pros and cons list of having a third, and we couldn't make a decision. Like, it was just, there was good things, there was like, trade-offs that we'd have to sort of consider. And then sure enough, the universe sort of made the decision for us. And there was a lot of tears initially when we found out that we were pregnant, because we were like, what did we do? Like, we've just had the best.
What's the age gap between the second and third?
3.5 years. So it was, we had a bit of time out of that baby stage, and we're about to be thrown back into it. But then COVID hit, and then he was born right in the middle of that. So it was sort of the last 4 or 5 months of the pregnancy, I didn't really think much about being pregnant, because, we were suddenly teaching online and flipping everything, and then giving birth in a hospital where it was totally shut down, and, your family couldn't come visit you. But he has just been the greatest addition to our family. Like, everyone, like, he's somehow got some like following that we're unaware of. Like, I'll go out in public and you'll just hear Rudy, and you're like, who is that kid? Like, why are these people yelling out my son's name? Like,
are they kids or adults? Or
both. Like, people are just obsessed with him.
Yeah, right.
He's just got this energy about him. And when he was born, we were just like, you've been here before. Like, you have lived this life many times. You know what's up. And he's the third child. So like, he is just thrown from one place to another. So he's just gotten used to being busy, which is maybe a negative. He doesn't actually know how to be calm, but
Getting up
probably
at 4:33, whatever that number was.
Hey, he's
again,
up sometimes earlier than me. He'll wake up, and because he'll always just end up sleeping next to you at some point. And his new favourite thing is it wake up time yet? And I'm like, it's 2 a.m, so no, go back to sleep.
When I sold you guys the place, he obviously wasn't born, but you would have had your second, is that right?
Well, no, he was born, because I actually went back through my emails the other day, and 2 days before he was born, you and I were emailing to sell our last house.
Sorry, there you go.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been second. I knew you're pregnant.
Yeah.
But might have been second or third.
Yeah. So no, he was like a baby when we bought the next house from you. Yeah.
Wavell Heights, you don't mind me saying, obviously you live in that area.
Yeah, it's just the best suburb, and one that I didn't think that we would end up living in. Obviously growing up in Redcliffe, and my husband grew up sort of the west side of the river. He really wanted to end up at like Graceville, and to me I was like, no, that's just too far away from my parents, like, because they're firmly set up in Redcliffe. They're not
still
moving.
There now, or?
Yeah, they live on the beach there, and it's just that for Dad, he lived in Sydney, and then him and Mum moved here when he took over a company, and he just wanted to be near water. Like, for him, that was just like the non-negotiable. sort of point when choosing a suburb to live in, and so they ended up choosing Redcliffe and have never left. So
it is accessible apart from when it's peak hour traffic.
Yeah, I think it's better now, but growing up there and going to school in Brisbane, you just felt quite isolated. But to raise a family there is incredible. Like, yeah, I could definitely actually, no, I couldn't definitely live there.
You couldn't live there, but it's
But yeah,
a lot of people who live in that area. They've got to have family there. They've got to
Yes.
have it is a struggle to get to the north side and further in the city. But Wavell's beautiful because you can pop up north.
Yeah.
If need be, you can jump in the tunnel. A lot of bigger blocks.
Yeah.
A lot of young families. It's still semi-affordable for the right people.
Yeah.
And, it's just got a really good feel to it. It's got, a big community page on Facebook, which a lot of these suburbs do. But that's the one area I love to sell in because the people are just down to earth, good sort of people. So
Well, we love seeing your name pop up on signs.
there'll be a few across the road soon. But I love that area and building a house in particular in that area at the moment. So going back. So you've got your routine every day, which is, do you ever slip up from that routine?
Yeah, like this morning I didn't go to the gym. So
Even in your holidays from school, you still train?
yeah. Still 5 a.m.
Still 5 a.m.,
I think you've got to listen to your body when things aren't going right. And at the moment I've pulled a nerve in my calf and it's causing me grief, and I kind of pushed through it for a little bit too long until it got to the point where I was like, no, okay, you need to just stop. So I think it's really important to have routines, but at the same time it's also important to have flexibility and go, okay, well, my body is telling me something different right now and I need to respect that. And sometimes having a break is just as important a part of the routine as getting up at 4:33.
Discussing this place in the Gold Coast hinterlands you've been to.
Yes, Gwingana.
Gwingana, that's right, Gwingana.
Yeah.
So you went to Gwingana.
So it's not Bali,
No,
just
I thought it was
confirming
Bali.
you.
I had heard on a podcast.
Look, there probably
last
is
week.
many of
Does
them
sound
in
like
Bali.
It's a Bali name,
yeah.
but Gwingana. So what happens in Gwingana and how long did you go there for?
Not much happens in Gwingana, and I think that's the whole point. So my husband bought it for me, and I'm trying to remember why he bought it for me. Like maybe I had a mental breakdown or something, like school wasn't good, and he was like, okay, well, you need to go somewhere. And this is like so out of my comfort zone. Like I don't do things alone. Like I prefer to be with people, like even if I'm going to dinner or, somewhere, a birthday party, like I want to walk in with someone. Like walking in alone is a fear of mine. So to go away to this retreat for 3 days by myself, and
People are at the retreat, roughly.
I don't know, like maybe 30. But I don't know what its capacity would be, because I guess maybe there's some people that go and don't come to the common areas for the meals for whatever reason. But it's just this massive property, and you're like detoxing from life for a little bit. So it's all organic meals that they cook from things that they grow on the property. You choose how much.
Vegan, or there is still meat there? And
No,
stuff?
there was meat, yeah. But I guess it's organic. So there's certainly no pesticides or sprays that they're putting on the veggies. And it's up to you what you do. So you can do all the classes. So like there's yoga, there's hikes, there's breathing, there's like nutrition sessions.
Do you implement much of that after you'd been there into everyday life, or?
I think I was doing a lot of it already, but it was just, I guess, more about recognizing, and particularly being a parent, like your fuse can get quite short sometimes. Like there's sensory overload, I guess, of particularly working in a school. Like you're juggling so many people at any one point, and then you go home and you've got children that are making a lot of noise, and so there's so much happening that you're trying to process. And so they talked about like you go like the traffic lights, you're green, like you're calm, but then sometimes orange, like you recognize that you're starting to get a little bit more rushed in your decision making, or you're on edge a little bit, and then there's red. And obviously you want to intervene earlier before you get to red. So I think that was probably the biggest takeaway in not getting to red so quickly and going, okay, the kids are annoying me, they're making too much noise, the house isn't as clean as what I would want it, but what can you do to sort of stop yourself from getting to red? Because
Does that breathing work then come into it, or?
Yeah, I think like we spoke about this back to my eldest playing sport and my husband coaches rugby. We're talking about how after the rugby boys score a try, they always come together and they take a big breath. And my kids were asking, well, why do they do that? And we're talking around like the breath is the one thing that you have complete control over. So there's so many things in life that will happen each day that you cannot control, but you and your breath, you can. So they do that to sort of reset and breathe in unison together. So again, sort of like operating as a team, but also controlling their breath. So yeah, absolutely breathing. But sometimes a girlfriend of mine told me this, and it was just everything can be solved with water. So even if it means just like going out and turning the hose on and spraying your feet, and I know that that's the most bizarre concept, but it just resets you.
Part of that grounding, they call it?
Maybe. Yeah.
It's fascinating. The more you sort of, a lot of this, motivation, self-motivation, how to get better. It's, there's all this, the grounding and
be where your feet are.
Yeah, natural sunlight in the morning and ice baths and breathing. And
have you done an ice bath?
I have once, briefly, but
how long did you last?
Sorry?
How long did you last?
20 seconds. But
20 seconds?
The aim is to be, to be honest, the aim is to have a nice house with a ice bath and a sauna. And
what kind of sauna?
I do infrared at the moment, so I don't care what it is. I just feel I sleep a lot better after I have a sauna, and I listen to a podcast in the sauna, and it just resets everything. Yeah. But I'd love to have that morning routine. I listen to a podcast, Both Sides podcast, and Matt Schramer, who's a buyer's agent who used to play for the Gold Coast Titans, it's called a miracle morning, and he's up at 4.
Okay.
And between 4 and 8, he's training, he's meditating, he's listening to podcasts. I think he does the grounding, potentially ice bars and sauna and stuff like that.
That's phenomenal.
So he gets up at 4 and then he's at work by 8:30.
Yeah.
And then finishes at 6, in bed by 8.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone can do that, but if it works for you, it works for you. But
does he do that on weekends too?
Yes, I think from what I believe. I don't think he works on the weekends, but it's just fascinating that some of these people live like that. So I'd love to have a sauna and an ice bath.
Well, when it's built, I'll come round.
Yes, but I just think it's the best value for, I go to one, as I said now, the infrared at City K, but it'd be pretty cool to have one. Yeah. And it wouldn't be pretty cool to see the power bill, but
Well, all the research of the benefits that has on like your cardiovascular health is like through the roof. So absolutely, I support you getting that.
Well, it's hard to book into on a Monday night for obvious reasons. Everyone's trying to book it on a Monday night. Yeah. So going back to the house, you said you had a funny story. The property I sold you some ghosts or something or other.
Yeah, and so I know a lot of people sit on the fence here around sort of what they believe in the spiritual world, and I guess I've just kind of always been open to hearing other people's perspectives on life. And I've got a really close girlfriend who's very much into sort of spiritual and holistic health, and just a couple of things happened at our house. We had a break-in and we had some cars stolen, and so I wanted like a cleansing of the house. And so my girlfriend got in touch with this land healer, and so the land healer came to the house. And
Native person? Or?
Yeah, First Nations. And honestly, I just thought that they were going to like do some lovely rituals and like that would be it. But they ended up analysing me for the whole hour that they were there. So I certainly wasn't prepared for that. But about a week before he came, I was in our bedroom and I heard a noise at the front of the street. And so I was in the walk-in cupboard and I've gone to the window, and then at like a split-second periphery, I've seen someone in our cupboard. But I knew immediately that it wasn't a real person, and it was just like there was no fear. Like I didn't get like nervous. I still went and checked in the cupboard to make sure that no one was there. And then I never told anyone about it because I was like, okay, well that was like bizarre.
You didn't tell Carl?
I didn't tell anyone.
Yeah, right.
And then the land healer came and immediately he was like, yep, so you've got someone in your back left-hand corner that's wearing a black leather jacket and has red hair. And I was like, oh, okay, I haven't seen that one. Yes. And then he was just saying that there's a lot of spirits that are attached to the house that are struggling to let go. And so obviously, as you know, there was a house previously on the block that someone lived in for a really long time, and then a builder knocked it down and built the house that we're currently living in. And then again, I hadn't told my best friend about this person that I saw in our room. I hadn't, like, no one knew. There was no
Spiritual
way.
Friend?
Yes.
Yeah.
And her husband was actually there with me for the session. And then I said to the man, I was like, do you mind just like coming upstairs and just see what you feel upstairs? And then immediately when he walked into our room, he's like, you know, you have a man in your cupboard. And I just was like, I knew it. And I said, can you tell me more about like what you see? Because when I saw it, it looked like a soldier. So just someone standing up, really, you know, strong, tall, quite chiseled jawline. And then he basically described him as I saw him. And so because we'd just been robbed and I was in sort of like a state of high alert, your mind becomes open to sort of seeing spirits, I guess. And so in that moment, I was able to sort of connect with the spiritual world. And then the man was like, yeah, so he's not like, it's not a problem. Like, you've just got a man in your cupboard.
Was he saying this with the previous owner or?
No, he said that I could try and work out who he was, but he was connected to the land. But then we didn't really do much about trying to work it out. But I just would sit in my room and ask him to leave.
Just politely, would you mind leaving, please? I've just been broken into.
Yeah.
I don't need your security here for the night. So.
But that's why we changed our front door. So the front door used to have like glass cutouts in the massive wooden door. And the land healer was like, yeah, that's, you're welcoming spirits in. So I don't know, to any future builders, maybe consider solid wooden doors to block the spiritual word. Yeah.
So pebbling.
Yeah, so you've never heard of this concept?
I've never heard of pebbling.
So, you know, penguins.
I do know penguins.
And how, like, when they're, like, hatching eggs, they'll go and collect all these rocks and they'll bring them back and they'll, like, or maybe it's when they're courting. Oh, God. Maybe we should restart this. I think we should restart this.
You're beyond me. You got to remember I got an OP24, Megan.
Oh, but not a 25.
No, not a 25, yeah.
They go and get rocks and they give them to, like, a female to try and court them. And so Adam...
Carl on the basketball court.
On the basketball court. He was pebbling me right before it was even an idea. So Adam Grant, have you heard of him? No. Oh, my God, Ross, you need to know who Adam Grant is. He's an occupational psychologist and he has written all these wonderful books and he has a great podcast. You should listen to the podcast.
I'll probably listen to the books,
But so I follow him on LinkedIn and the other day it came up with this quote, and I don't know whether he's come up with it or not, but he spoke around how you have those friends that always send you the reels. Yes. Do you have friends that send you reels?
Yes, I'm one of those people.
You are one of those. Yeah. So you're pebbling your friends. So it's little moments that you're finding with people to have connections with them. So you're not having a conversation. You're just sending them a reel because you thought of them.
Oh, there you go. So how many, if you pebble, how many people do you pebble on the one reel?
Oh, good question. Probably one, because like the reel's got to be specific to a person. Like that's not really like lovely pebbling then if you're sending it to the masses,
but if it's someone that has common interests.
I guess if it's a mum one, then I would like pebble that to my mum chat.
Well, I might pebble tonight because I'd probably check my phone now to have 3 pebbles from people. But so many people, you know, friends and stuff send these pebbles. I don't read half of them, to be honest.
But
so you
now
probably miss
you
some
should.
Good stuff. Yeah, I do. But
it's your friends trying to reach out to you.
Not when they send you 9 pebbles in a row without a reply.
Well, maybe you should reply to the first one so they don't have to send you. But that's a good friend that they've sent you 8 or 9 consecutive reels. or it's an annoying friend. I don't know.
11 o'clock on a Friday, but yeah.
AM or PM?
No, AM.
What are they doing?
That's
they should
a good question, yeah.
have a job. Yeah.
Must be a teacher.
Oh,
No, just
I
joking.
wish.
Yeah. So going back to the pebbling and then the friendship group,
Yeah.
like you're busy, you've got 3 kids.
Yep.
You work full time, you get up at 4:30, 3.
3, yeah.
You get home at, what time do you get home?
Oh, mixed. But I try and have the afternoon with the kids.
Afternoon with the kids.
Yeah.
You're working from 7 till 10. You've still got a friendship group from many years ago.
Yeah. My 2 core friends, we met in kindergarten. So we have been through every phase of life together. We went to different high schools. And in a way, I think that was probably a good thing because we got to sort of develop a little bit as individuals away from each other.
Stay friends throughout that
the
time?
whole time. Yeah,
wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. And this was like pre-Facebook and Instagram and all these sort of social media apps.
Nokia 5110s?
Oh, that's Snake on that, you know. They don't make phones like they used to.
You ever run out of credit?
All the time, yeah. Like the kids don't know how to use a payphone. The stress of like, oh, you've got 10 cents left on credit.
Yeah, you have to prank someone if you had enough money to prank someone.
So they're family.
Yeah.
And I'm 35 now, so I've known them my entire life. My parents know their parents. Like they're my people. And then got a really strong core group of friends from high school. So there's probably about 15 of us that have remained in really close contact. And going back to what we were talking about earlier of people moving overseas, like so many of them went and lived overseas at different periods, some, straight after school, some just recently. People have met their husbands overseas, but we've always sort of come back to one another. And then, you have kids and you meet friends through their friends and sport. So it's lots of pebbling going on, that's for sure.
That's what I was saying to actually Rosie from our team, who's, I think she's 26, 27. She's like, I'm so sad. All my friends are moving overseas. And I said, don't worry, they'll be back.
Absolutely.
Head between the tail broke.
Yeah.
How good's Brisbane in 2 to 5 years? Because people do appreciate it.
I think, it's like anything. Like when you step away from something, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I think Brisbane has evolved so much in the last decade that it is now becoming such a competitive sort of hotspot of things to keep you busy, and it's a great lifestyle.
There's Nick, who was our guest last week, hadn't been here for some 25 years, and he called it a country town, and he was staying on near Howsmith Wharves there, and we had dinner at Greca and Howsmith Wharves.
What do you think after that?
Oh, he loved it. He's like, I want to move here, get me a job here. So there's just so much happening here.
Yeah.
5-10 years ago it was a little bit different, but
you'd see all the suburbs.
Yeah, see all the suburbs, and that's the best part of this, the job that I'm in. But living at Wavell, you can just zip in the tunnel. Yep. Get an Uber. Head to Howsmith Wharves or wherever, but then you've got that beautiful footbridge going in from Botanical Gardens to Kangaroo Point. Yeah. There's that little hub there. There's a new step.
No shortage of places.
Shortage. But even in these...
West End
as well. West End is an interesting place to go to. But even, in the suburbs, you've got those little pockets like Nunda Village and then Chermside. Yep. If you don't have to travel into the city to do that. So.
No, and I think, I've never lived overseas, but what I love about London is their high streets and how...
You've been to London?
Yeah. But only like on... my eldest brother lived there for almost 10 years. So I got to see where he lived and the high streets that sort of were around his suburb. And I think that's what Brisbane doesn't have as much. And you mentioned Nunda. Nunda has a beautiful high street. I just want to see it get, a little bit more lively. There was a bar there that was open, but it's shut down now. And
remember that one? Did it have the rooftops?
Rooftop.
Yeah, that was
like it's those things. And, Wilston has a beautiful high street with lots of lovely sort of restaurants and little bars, and even all the like wineism that's open up at Albion, like just getting all these cool little places to go and have a bite to eat or a drink that's not in like CBD or the valley.
It's affordability now, to be honest. So like you go to one of these local places, you want to try and support, and it's $12.50 for a wine and $15 for a beer. You're like, the average person no one really wants to pay for that.
Yeah.
So hopefully once things settle down with inflation,
Yeah.
cost of living, but
Cost of
these
living.
little hubs are amazing. So
Yeah.
and most of your friends, when you catch up, where do you go? I've seen a few posts at a few wineries. And
Yeah. Well, it was 5 years in the making, but we just did a girls' weekend a couple of weekends ago. So the last one that we went on, half of us were pregnant. So this weekend away was slightly different to the previous one. We had this Airbnb at Mount Tambourine.
Oh, wow.
So it was lovely. It was a beautiful weekend. But we are thinking that the next one we might go somewhere a little bit more livelier than Mount Tambourine. We had this lunch at a winery booked, and about 15 minutes before we were to leave, the cab company called and was like, yeah, so you know that the cabs don't service Mount Tambourine. And we're like, why couldn't you tell us that at 9 a.m? So we ended up having this bus driver for the afternoon. But yeah, just being, and it's a big commitment to all of us walk away from our families for 3 days and to leave a lot of kids. Like I think we've got almost 25 kids between us. Like it's a lot of children. We're outnumbered. And it's not easy to manage that and sort of coordinate everyone's schedules to be able to all go away together. But I think all of us walked away for various reasons just feeling so filled that we'd been able to sort of have those connections with each other in a really lovely weekend. So
rare, and that's what I keep saying to Megan. It's like it's rare that you know these friendship groups have survived that long.
Yeah.
You know, a lot
pebbling.
Of pebbling. Yeah,
You just
I
have
think
to
there's
pebble.
a bit more than pebbling. We pebble, but it's hard enough for me to catch. I've got most of my friends have kids and whatnot, and it's hard for them. But you've got to make the effort and do that because life's so short. And as you said, being 35, and you know what happens when you're 45.
Yeah.
And you've got to stay in touch with those people.
Yeah.
So.
And, you know, kids are the easiest excuse. You can always just be like, oh, I'm sorry, like kids or one sick or like it's the easy way out. But, and, you know, my kids are the priority. Like they'll always, if they need me, I will always choose them over going and doing something social. But I am really lucky that I'm at the point now where they're a little bit more self-sufficient and they are a bit older that, you know, I think it's important for them to see their mum go out too and have friendships and you're trying to model that sort of the benefit that comes from having connections with people. And I think that's why I went into education, which, you know, and probably why I went into psychology to begin with, is that you're working with people and like you work with people every day and they're like, people are complex and you learn so much about not only yourself through working with people or having friendships with people, like, but yeah, I just think humans are you have to be connected. We basically have a psychology degree without having to be a psychologist. We have to because you have to be empathetic with people when, you know, they're selling on the
house and whatnot.
sell side, like you're dealing with people's biggest or maybe their biggest asset.
Assets, and it's not always an easy transaction either. So,
no.
Yeah.
And, you know, the skill of negotiation is, and there's a great podcast on that too, is...
I was about to ask, sorry, what podcasts do you listen to and what, obviously you do a lot of reading?
Well, I used to read a lot. Carl and I got to Tasmania at the beginning of the year for 3 nights and I read 4 books in 3 days.
No basketball?
No basketball in Tasmania. So when I am provided space to read, like on a flight, like I can super fast reader. But I just don't have capacity at the moment to read. And I miss reading, but I read like tacky books. Like I read like crime, mystery, like murder, awful books. But podcasts, I really just love hearing people's stories. So like Adam Grant, Bream Brown, just hearing how people have learnt more about understanding people. Because in the job that I do, like I work with a lot of people and some of them are teenagers whose their brain is not developed, like it's half developed, half shut down. And so having more insight into how humans work and how humans behave just gives you a little bit more like sometimes just reassurance that the way that you are doing things is, you know, our way to do it. It's not necessarily the right way. I don't think there is a right way, but yeah, I just love listening to people talk about their experiences.
You pick up something from every podcast.
Yeah.
And that's sort of why I started this podcast, talking to everyday people, teachers.
I'm very much an everyday
basketball,
person.
whatever it is. But it's a bit like what you think you're an everyday person, but what you do compared to someone else would be just like, wow, I'm blown away. Like, I'm blown away how organised you are. I thought I worked hard, and then you're like, I do what you do, plus I have 3 kids, plus I have a husband.
I didn't say that.
Plus I have more than 2 meals in the fridge. But,
Stop it. Hey, you got 2 good meals.
Yeah, no, they're 2 good quality meals. But that's the beauty of podcasts, and I think that you can listen to a podcast, you can absorb some information. And what speed did you say, Megan, you listen to these podcasts
1.7.
1.7. Billy, who's our videographer here today, Billy's like, oh, you speed them up? What did you speed them up to?
Yeah.
Megan's like 1.7 and Billy was 1.5. I'm like, I really got to start speeding these podcasts up.
I've tried to, but it's a bit too fast.
Well, hopefully this one today is about 55 minutes. So anyway.
So if you watch it at like 1.7 speed, you won't have to endure too much pain.
We'd love some feedback. But thank you so much for coming on the Arm Wrestle today, Megan.
Thanks for having me.
It's been absolutely amazing.
Good for you for, always having this idea and, only actioning it, when someone who was dear to you sort of passed away and told you to do it. And
life's short, and as I said, I see you on Instagram, and I was like, I feel like sometimes just saying you are doing so well. So
thank you, Russ.
I'm sure you probably don't. It's hard doing what you're doing, but I think a lot of people look up to you and respect what you're doing. So
same to you.
Thanks for coming on the Arm Wrestle, Megan.
Thank you.
Pleasure.